Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. Look, we're going to have a string of videos I'm putting out where it's just interviews from Brad Garlinghouse, Ripple CEO. He is all over traditional media and crypto media lately. So we've got this one. This is an interview at the Economic Club of New York, which we've known has been coming for, I don't know how long, over a month. It's been a while that we knew this was coming. And there was a long video. There was a 50-minute video, and it did not disappoint. So what I did is I watched this whole thing, and as a result, this video took a lot more prep work than most of my videos, but I went ahead and took notes as I was watching the video, and then I emailed them to myself, so I'm going to run through them, which is not something I normally do in my videos, but I'm going to run through them point by point as we go through this video here. And so that's the vast majority of what I'm going to be talking about here. It's just the questions posed to Brad Garlinghouse and his answers. And the last thing I will touch on in this video, completely unrelated, but it's just fun. Look at this headline. McAfee DEX hit by DDoS attack days after beta launch. So I mentioned this in a recent video. John McAfee, he released his own decentralized cryptocurrency exchange. And it got attacked days after the beta launch. So there we go. But I'll tell you what, John McAfee, that guy, think what you will about him, but he is an interesting fellow. Okay, I think it's fair to say that. Now, before we get going here, if you would please delicately tap that like button. And if you're a fan of Ripple and XRP and Brad Garlinghouse, go ahead and subscribe to the Moon Lambo channel. All right, time to dig in here. So here we go. He was asked, and by the way, the person interviewing him, this is Liz Clayman. Here, I'll just highlight here. This is her Twitter profile. #1 business news anchorwoman in America, passionate journalist. She has a show called The Clayman Countdown, which is at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox Business Channel. And she writes, wife, mom, triathlete, Cal Berkeley grad, chocoholic redhead. Good stuff here. So, she asked, so, like, where are we in terms of adoption with cryptocurrency? And, what inning are we in? And Brad Garlinghouse said, we're still in the batter's box. Like, he doesn't even think like the game started the way that he was talking about. He said that the hype is substantially ahead of reality. That's something that he said in the past, so not too terribly surprising. And I certainly agree with him on that front. Brad says the novelty of a blockchain is to conduct a transaction with certainty without trust being required. Because Liz Clayman, she was asking, so what is it about this? What's the purpose of this? And she's kind of asking on the lines of why, and I'm going to get to it in a second, but why indeed should anybody in this room want to hold XRP? But anyway, she asked if XRP is a stable coin, and Brad ultimately talked about how XRP engineers being early Bitcoiners, and they were indeed, they're enthusiasts of Bitcoin. They saw that there would be a scaling issue just thanks to the nature of Bitcoin technologically speaking, thanks to proof of work, which solves the double spend problem. He says mining slows down transactions and makes it expensive, and so they created the consensus algorithm, which in the moment he said he wasn't really going to get into, and then he did sort of try and explain it later on in this interview, but didn't really thoroughly get into it. I think it would be over the heads of most people in that room probably, because they're probably not thoroughly knowledgeable in terms of like cryptocurrencies, how they work and operate and all that good stuff. So I bet a lot of the stuff that Brad was saying in terms of when he's talking about mining and this and that and consensus algorithm, I'm sure people were like, "What the hell is he talking about?" But they just probably nod their heads like, "Yeah, pretend they know what he's talking about, right?" All right. So then, what's the use case? Why would someone in the audience think that they should buy it? And Brad Garlinghouse says people are speculating, and he said that's 99.9% of all crypto transactions. He said it's just pure speculations. He said that 40 to 50 billion in dollars in crypto transactions are conducted daily, and so what's the utility? Ripple uses XRP to solve the correspondent banking problem. That's the point that he made. Whereas, pretty much again, almost 100% of transactions, it's purely speculation. It's not actually doing anything. And think about the massive amounts of money involved in the energy that required to do that, which is kind of mind-boggling, really, but. And then give an example of how XRP was used to purchase anything. That's what Liz Clayman said. Go ahead and give an example. And then Brad Garlinghouse, and you and I know, like, XRP isn't heavily being positioned to be used as money, right? We know that. But, when people think cryptocurrency, what's the one use case? They always think of it being used as money, right? And so it's a fair enough question. Give an example of how XRP was used to purchase anything. So Brad said he doesn't think there's a good consumer use case, as far as using a cryptocurrency in place of a fiat currency. That, of course, that includes XRP. He says, and this is something that I agree with Brad so much. I've talked about this so much on this channel, and it was so good to hear just like a rational thinker just talking out loud about something that he truly believes. Because I say all the time, it's like, what problem are you solving as it pertains to using Bitcoin in the place of fiat, which really you can't even do because the transactions are too high. Nobody even accepts it. It's so volatile, all the energy required to conduct these transactions. But even if you didn't have the technological hurdles and the volatility, like, what problem are you actually solving? Because, like, using dollars here in the United States works pretty damn well. I've said that a number of times on this channel. So anyway, Brad says he doesn't think there's a good consumer use case. He just doesn't see. Brad says he just doesn't see the purpose of replacing fiat currency. He says 95% of global GDP, gross domestic product, you don't need to use crypto to solve a fiat problem. Now, Brad did state with fiat currencies in turmoil, when there are instances like that, those currencies, whether it's just for political reasons, runaway inflation, whatever it may be, he said those fiat currencies are in danger of being replaced by crypto, but he said that's a small percent of global transactions, very small. And I've made the same point. I said, because can crypto actually replace fiat currency? Well, yeah, maybe. I've said that. I've been very open about that. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. And if it does, it wouldn't replace all fiat currencies the world over, because it's, again, what problem are you actually solving here? But I could see over a span of many decades, or maybe it could happen a little soon. I don't know. I don't know what the time frame looks like, but sure, yeah, why not? If it's solving a problem, it's going to happen, right? And then the volatility would work itself out with whatever coin or coins end up being used for that particular use case here. All right, Brad said that MoneyGram Partnership was a big deal. He said that their MoneyGram is a $1.2 billion enterprise company with lots of debt. So their market cap is only a few $100 million, and they have negative working capital. Talks about this, pre-funding of accounts and dormant capital. And he noted, and it's not surprising, but it's fun to hear this statement I'm about to tell you, and just the fact that came around, because he stated that MoneyGram, when they began their talks, and by the way, they courted MoneyGram for it was over a year, trying to close this deal with MoneyGram and get them as a client. MoneyGram, they were just skeptics right out the gate. And so he said they went from that to, quote, Brad Garlinghouse said, quote, "Holy cow." That was the response from MoneyGram, basically. That's a quote from Brad Garlinghouse. And that he said that they couldn't be more thrilled with how XRapid is working, and it's actually saving them real money, improving their bottom line, right? And then Brad Garlinghouse was asked about volatility. And this is a fun factor. So Brad Garlinghouse says the average Swift transaction takes about 3 days. 3 days is 270,000 seconds. So even with less volatility of fiat currency compared to XRP, it's more risky to conduct a Swift transaction due to the length of time it takes to settle the transaction. If you're talking about highly volatile asset XRP, okay, fine, but it's not that volatile over the course of the 3 to 5 seconds it takes to close a ledger. It's really a non-issue. It really is. And then what's next here? So Brad Garlinghouse doesn't think XRP or any other crypto will make inroads in terms of a consumer use case. He just mentioned that again, so that's why it's in my notes twice here. But in terms of just replacing fiat here, Brad Garlinghouse talked about the decentralization of Bitcoin. He says that it's decentralized, but with Bitcoin there's an asterisk. He says 4 miners control more than 50% of the compute power on the Bitcoin blockchain in China. And then he went into the whole thing about the 51% attack, which means that you can actually do a chain reorganization, which literally just allows you to double spend. That it really is. It's to me, it's like tantamount to thievery, theft. That's what I always compare it to. But he was talking about how that can be done, and then so when you're talking about is Bitcoin decentralized, Brad said yes, and I do think it's fair to state that yes, it is. But there's that little asterisk there which says, But you might be in a lot of trouble if there's a 51% attack, especially, again, all that compute power in China. Could the Chinese government take that over, and what would that mean? And you can imagine, and then think about the political implications of that. Like, what if there's an election running, maybe a U.S. election, for example, and what if Bitcoin were a huge factor in where money is flowing around the world, and then China, what if they actually could take over those mining operations? And so these are the types of things that people are concerned about, and rightfully so. I think it's perfectly fair to be aware of this and actually be concerned. All right, next here. Oh yeah, this was great. So Brad did curse. I'm gonna have to censor him because I don't curse on the Moon Lambo channel because there's sometimes, I'm sure, youngins in the background and I don't need to be dropping F-bombs. But he did curse in front of this crowd, and some people in the crowd just kind of chuckled. They did kind of laugh. So Brad said 1% of global energy consumption in Bitcoin is mining. Right, which is massive. 1% of global energy consumption. Not just crypto energy consumption, global consumption of energy, it's Bitcoin mining. And he said that's a holy S-word moment. And that's when the crowd laughed. And I did too, guys. I was like, I didn't think Brad was going to be dropping an S-bomb there. Anyway, he says XRP creators saw this problem coming and noted the closer you get to 21 million Bitcoin being released, the more energy is required. Then he talked about the consensus algorithm. Right? And that's when he got into a little bit more detail about it. Not intensely in depth, but he sort of explained it. And so, what is Ripple's transaction error rate? Brad was asked by Liz Clayman here. And Brad says close to 0%. And then he talked about the way Swift operates. It's like sending a postcard, and you never know if it arrives at the intended recipient. And it goes back to just the fact that Swift technology, this legacy technology, it's unidirectional. And so Xcurrent, while it's reasonably fair to compare Xcurrent to Swift because it has to do with payments. And just conceptually, I think it's okay to compare it to the Swift legacy system. It's not the same because with Xcurrent, it's certainly improved, and you get bidirectional communication with Xcurrent. So it's certainly superior here. All right, next here, Facebook has eroded its trust with people and governments. This is from Brad here. Facebook announcing a cryptocurrency. I love this comparison. He said that Facebook announcing a cryptocurrency is like Boeing announcing they're going to launch a new double-decker airplane amidst the 737 MAX problems. And for those of you not aware, and I guess it was earlier this year, but Boeing has these 737 MAX planes, and they became pretty crashy. Very bad stuff. Very, very bad stuff. And he was saying, like, if they were to announce that they're manufacturing a brand new plane amidst all of that negative publicity, that's essentially what Facebook did with the fact that they've rightfully, and Brad didn't pick a side, he didn't say it was right or wrong that Facebook's trust is eroded, but he said amidst that, it doesn't really make sense for them to be saying, hey, we're launching a cryptocurrency, which I think is a fair point. So he was asked, Brad, what regulatory changes should be implementing? What needs to change here from a regulatory perspective? And Brad had an answer that only partly surprised me. He said that really there's already a very robust banking regulations in place, and he said you don't really need to change it. And so if you think, it makes sense, so we've already got XRapid in production form because there is regulatory certainty on both ends of that transaction as far as KYC and AML regulatory clarity. So that part didn't surprise me, but some people might be scratching their heads and going, well, why? In fact, let me pull this up right here. So here's a tweet from XRP Neo, and I think it's a fair question. They said, so Brad at the Economic Club of New York, when asked about the regulations he would like to see answered, that we already have regulations and that RippleNet is basically more plumbing. So what is this whole regulation talk about? And I think, look, there are other things that need to be determined, in terms of classifying what cryptocurrencies are. Are they commodities? Are they currencies? Are they securities? Those types of things do still need to be clarified. All Brad was really getting at was that, as far as what regulatory clarity is needed for the production version of their software, which utilizes XRP, that's already set. They don't need any additional regulatory clarity there. But you do, in terms of adoption and convincing customers to adopt, and that's why, and I'd cited this fairly recently, but Ashish Burla, he's one of the senior vice presidents at Ripple. I think it's senior vice president of product, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken. And he cited recently that, just in the last month or maybe two, that they see innovation. He sees innovation going over to Asia, and he noted that it's harder to get customers here in the United States just because of regulatory uncertainty. That doesn't mean, again, that Ripple has plowed forward with X-Current, which utilizes XRP. It doesn't mean that Ripple plowed forward with that technology while there's not certainty around whether or not that's legal from a regulatory perspective. Of course not. So that's not exactly what he meant. He's just saying that portion of the regulatory certainty, it's already in place, but obviously the rest is not. He just didn't talk about it, and I think that's what led to XRP Neo's question here, which is a perfectly reasonable question, and I see where it came from, but I think it's going to kind of confuse people, and I see why. I definitely see why. Next here, regulatory. Yeah, so he did, and I'll clarify this too. It's kind of in the tweet that I just showed you, but he talks about regulatory endpoints being the same with XRapid as is the case with legacy transactions via SWIFT, which is what I was just saying. And he basically said that Ripple just changed how the plumbing works. That's it, and he used the word plumbing. All right, here's an audience question. It said, why not just link up existing payment networks to solve the problem and be done with it? Why do we need Ripple and XRP? And Brad explained, he used this example. And by the way, I actually wasn't completely happy. I mean, this is a great interview. I'm not going to be too critical of Brad because he was awesome and he was just knocking the stuff out of the park. But he didn't really ever come fully around and answer the question. I don't think he was trying to dodge it. It's probably like he started going down one path and I don't think he ever got back to it. But he did say something which is fundamentally, like, it's true, and I just find it fascinating. He explained that PayPal, which owns Venmo, by the way, I said that he goes, have you ever tried to move money from PayPal to Venmo? And then he paused and he said, you can't. You literally can't do that. So, you have to move money from PayPal to your bank and then to Venmo. That's it. And then he spoke a little bit more about that, but he never really got back to why do you need XRP, with the answer obviously being you'd have to understand how the correspondent banking system works, and then you'd have to explain that the utilization of XRP removes a requirement for trust, and then you don't need all of these intermediaries. All you have to do is trust in cryptography. So that's the real answer. He never really got quite back to that, but it's okay. I understand it. Like, sometimes I lose my train of thought. It happens, especially when I'm recording videos, and then I have to use thinking words while my brain tries to catch up, and then hopefully I don't panic and then forget what I'm talking about in the first place, which can happen. Whatever. I'm a person. Anyway, next year. So he was asked, "What do you think about asset tokenization?" Which is something I've talked about on this channel a few times recently. Brad says he doesn't know much about it, but he finds it interesting. The idea to be able to tokenize, for example, he cited an apartment complex, which means you could get in and out of it very easily, own a portion of it, not a bunch of paperwork. So Ripple invested in a company called Securitize, which is kind of working on this problem here. And so this goes back to what I keep saying about just as more time passes, tons of assets are going to be tokenized, and we're going to be in a much more liquid world, which I think will be beneficial. And you're not going to need a bunch of middlemen to facilitate all of these transactions. Anyway. All right, next. Brad says for the first several years he was at Ripple, they didn't buy any companies because he wanted to be laser focused on Ripple's technology and the adoption of that technology, which is now they're far enough along that they have been acquiring companies recently. And the way he was talking, I don't suspect it's going to stop. It's awesome. So I say, Ripple, keep on growing. Do you. Next, in early days, after Brad joined Ripple, they had to decide what they wanted to do. And I'd actually kind of talked about this in the past, but I learned something new today. I had not heard this. So there were 3 paths that they were deciding, and they were trying to decide which route they wanted to go as it pertains to XRP. So were they going to do, what they ultimately did, obviously, was payments. They are also considering going down the path of smart contracts, which I also had announced on this channel. And Vitalik Buterin, by the way, he was at the Ripple office. That's where he got the idea for Ethereum. It was from Ripple. I don't know if you guys know that, but indeed, Vitalik Buterin got the idea for Ethereum from Ripple. And so Ripple was actually considering going down the smart contracts path. And the third one, and this is one, I haven't researched this, and I don't know what this is, but he said the third one, the third use case they were considering pursuing was global identity. I know nothing about it. This is the first I've heard from anyone's mouth anywhere, but he said the third use case that they were trying to figure out if they want to pursue was called global identity. And I don't know what that means. I don't even know where to go to find. I haven't tried Googling it yet. I mean, so I could start there, right? I don't know that anything's going to come up if I type in global identity, but I guess I can try. So maybe I'll try looking into that. And then one of the last things he said in this video was, he stated it just quite flatly. He said, banks don't like Swift. And so when it comes to like trying to sell the product, makes it kind of easier when the banks already don't like your competition there. Check out this here. So that's it for that was covered in the video. I'm going to try and wrap this up because I know this is probably going a little bit longer than I intended. But anyway, so this is from Andrew Stone. Tagged me in this, and this is a tweet that says, "For all the haters, when we're on the moon." And here's somebody wearing a t-shirt that says, "I didn't invest in XRP," which I got a chuckle out of, so I thought I'd share it with you. Last piece I'm going to cover real quick here. McAfee DEX hit by DDoS attack day after beta launch. But hey, you know what? This isn't bad. I'm telling you, that was a really long interview with Brad Garlinghouse. I mean, it was over 50 minutes. So I summed it up as quickly as I could. So while sharing my thoughts. So I think I did well time-wise, even if this is a little longer than I intended. But after a short hiatus, John McAfee reappeared on the scene a few days ago, announcing the beta launch of a decentralized exchange following the launch of the McAfee Magic trading platform back in July. However, the McAfee DEX was soon under attack. While Magic enabled users to trade on multiple exchanges from a single dashboard, the McAfee DEX beta launch lets users simulate the trading of any token from an anonymous open-source platform with no censorship, KYC, or AML policy. The exchange will run on the Ethereum blockchain and will allow trading of any and all ERC20 tokens. In a statement, McAfee said, "This is our last chance, not with me, but with distributed exchanges. You have to use them now. Governments are afraid of crypto, afraid of us, and they will do anything within their power to stop us. You can't stop a distributed exchange. Please think about this." And then the piece continues, "However, soon after the DEX launch announcement, the platform had already become victim of a DDoS attack." And then here's a tweet from John McAfee. "As could have been predicted, DEX speed has slowed due to the humorous DDoS attacks that follow my every release of anything. We're adding nodes, and speed should be up to par in a few moments. I love the negative adoration of my trolls. They are proof I'm doing something right." So there you go. I just found it fascinating. Oh, good old John McAfee. What a guy. That's it for this video. I am not a financial advisor. Do not buy or sell anything because of anything that I say all right. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo!